I'm Jesse Ventura. Stay vigilant and question more. Welcome to my world. Come along for the ride. The world according to Jesse. Today, we talk about Jeffrey Epstein and the allegations that the politically connected millionaire was an intelligence asset. Interesting.
All right, today we're talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case. This is absolutely stunning. Washington, D.C. and the global elite are now bracing for impact as the U.S. Court of Appeals prepares to release thousands of documents related to that case against the convicted sex offender and alleged serial pedophile. Again, his name is Jeffrey Epstein. The documents are expected to reveal the names of Epstein's high-powered associates, including prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well-known prime minister, and other world leaders, and that's according to the court. Before we dive in, Jesse, what is your reaction to the possibility of a bunch of very prominent leaders' names coming out in this case?
Well, I'll tell you, Brigitte, they covered this case up the first time for a reason. You know, he was, and we'll get to that, but he got his sweet deal for a reason. And I don't think it was just because Jeffrey Epstein was a nice, smiling boy that they did that and did that for him. Obviously, there are powerful people at the first trial that, when he got his plea deal, that didn't want this to see the light of day.
No, of course not.
And now it's seeing the light of day. And Brigitte, this story could be the blockbuster damn near of the year.
I know. With
the power and the involvement of all the names you're hearing bandied around. To put it bluntly, it's rather scary.
Yeah, it's very, very shocking. It goes all the way up to the top, allegedly. So
that's right.
Let's dive into this, all right? So let's go back to where this story really began. Back in 2007, Jeffrey Epstein, a politically connected millionaire, was accused of molesting dozens of female children and running a cult-like sex trafficking ring at his houses in 3 American states and the Caribbean. Police interviews in a 53-page indictment reveal that Epstein often used his female child victims to bring other underage girls to his mansions, where he then coerced them into performing sexual acts. Some female children were even reportedly trafficked overseas. This scheme went back as far as 2001 and is believed to involve at least 103 underage girls. Despite the damning evidence against him, Epstein got off easy in that sweetheart deal you were just talking about. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida at the time, Jim Acosta, secretly negotiated that sweetheart plea deal that allowed Epstein to plead guilty in state court to 2 felony prostitution charges in exchange for a light sentence. Epstein served only 13 months in county jail, where he was granted work release privileges 6 days per week, allowing him to leave for up to 12 hours at a time, so pretty much the whole time that he was supposed to be in jail. He and his accomplices were also granted immunity from all federal criminal charges, and the FBI investigation into whether there were more victims or powerful people involved, and it seems like there were, it was halted. Epstein's victims and their families, on the other hand, were denied justice and even prevented from seeing that sweetheart plea agreement until it was presented in court. A lawyer representing many of Epstein's victims also claims that Epstein continued to prey on female children while he was serving time. And the work release records obtained through the Freedom of Information Act reveal that that might be a possibility because Epstein often signed himself in and out of jail. There are documents to prove it. That shows that he was not closely monitored. This is a story that's far too common. There are 2 justice systems, one for the rich and powerful and one for everybody else. Jesse.
Yeah, exactly, Brigitte. You hit the nail right on the head there. People need to understand clearly in the United States of America, our justice system is not justice for all. There's rich people justice and there's regular people justice. And the court should be embarrassed that that exists, but it does. After listening to this story, it is very clear that powerful forces, in my opinion, came into this case to hush it up because they didn't want this to go to any type of trial. They wanted it, you could clearly see, exposed and gotten rid of. as quickly as possible, move on, and all of this. And fortunately, it hasn't. Now it's risen again, and there'll be a second time around with this, which should not have happened the first time. And Brigitte, the big thing on this is, who else was involved?
Well, we're probably going to be finding out.
Yeah. Was in this whole thing. I mean, this is such sordid crap. Pedophilia, it doesn't get any lower than this, people. I don't think there are crimes on this planet that I have more disdain for. I'll tell you what, I sat on the Board of Pardons when I was governor of Minnesota, and I remember we had a pedophile come wanted his record expunged, cleaned off, and his victim came that day, a young girl who had grown up now. I called her up to me, and I whispered to her, I said, you don't ever have to come back to one of these again. Because I said, as long as I'm the governor and I'm sitting up here, a pedophile will never get their record expunged, cleared off, because I believe very strongly pedophilia doesn't end with them saying it did. It is a sickness.
Right. And I'm glad that you told her that she wouldn't have to come back again.
I said, you don't have to come back as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
You do not have to come back and make a plea, because it required the three of us had to be in unison, the Attorney General, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the governor. If one of us went the other way, don't happen. Has to be unanimous.
Right.
At least in Minnesota.
Well, there's a little bit of good news, and that's that the Justice Department's Office of Professional Responsibility is now investigating allegations that federal government lawyers, including Jim Acosta, committed misconduct in the handling of Epstein's case in 2007. I want to remind the viewers that Jim Acosta has served since 2017 as President Trump's labor secretary, overseeing American labor laws, including human trafficking. Now, he's just resigned, but he does claim that the non-prosecution deal that he cut with Epstein's attorney took place because he was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. That's crazy. And we don't know if those allegations are true, but if they are...
If that is true, and he got told by our government to drop it and leave it alone, then this is an investigation that has to go a lot farther than Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
I think Acosta needs to be investigated now. If what is said there is true, that he was told to back off, told by who?
Yeah, and who is he supposed to be an alleged intelligence
asset for? Who would tell him to back off from a pedophile case?
Right.
And why? Because obviously powerful people didn't want any type of involvement in this type of case. That's the only thing I read from it. Now, I'm only speculating, but Jesse is a little street smart.
Well, Epstein is now back behind bars. He was arrested this month in New York and hit with new criminal charges for allegedly sex trafficking dozens of children in New York and Florida between 2002 and 2005. Under double jeopardy laws, prosecutors are prohibited from targeting a suspect with the same charges on the same facts in a second case. But this time, prosecutors plan to focus on additional crimes by Epstein that were not included in the previous case against him, and crimes that he committed allegedly after those that led to his prior arrest. So they are playing the game here to catch him. Epstein has been denied bail this time around as well, and the courts are under a lot of pressure to prosecute him. But again, do you think this is going to actually happen?
Well, I think that the public scrutiny now, Brigitte, is so powerful.
Yes.
I mean, when he originally did it in Florida, it was much easier at that point to sweep it under the rug because it was localized pretty well. You could localize it. But now when you've got the former Secretary of Labor to the President of the United States involved in something that I feel is as corrupt as could ever be in our judicial legal system, and he did this as a U.S. attorney, and if he did do it under orders from someone, this is, I'll tell you what, I think this is worse than any Russian interference in our election.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And this case keeps getting more and more bizarre. Now, Epstein has long been touted as a billionaire and hedge fund manager for 10-figure investors, but there's very little proof that he was either. Documents have already debunked his billionaire financial status, although he's still reportedly wealthy, $500 million. And the hedge fund he claims to have run only has one known client. Now, this has led many people to speculate that the fund might have been a front for something else. But what? During a raid on Epstein's New York residence, police discovered an expired Austrian passport from the 1980s with Epstein's alias, listing his residence as Saudi Arabia. Epstein's lawyers claim that he acquired the passport decades ago as protection to hide his Jewishness while traveling in the Middle East. New York Magazine, which has done a great job covering this, reports that journalist and friend of Epstein's, Jesse Kornbluth, said Epstein worked for governments in the mid-1980s to recover money looted by African dictators and occasionally subcontracted to those same autocrats to help them hide their stolen money. So what do you think? Was he just a really rich guy who's shady, who has all these connections and is able to do things? Or do you think this is a bigger government conspiracy?
I don't know. Obviously, he seems to be a high-level crook.
Yes.
In many ways, wheeling and dealing with large amounts of money in probably things that are a bit underhanded, maybe. Like a real possible white-collar criminal, I guess you would call him out there, not a blue-collar one, but a white-collar one. And, again, I think the best thing that can possibly be done right now, Brigida, is to go back to Watergate and go back to the bowels of that parking ramp when Woodward was told by Deep Throat, follow the money. I think that's your answer here, too.
I think so.
Follow the money, because the money will take you to the answer. And I got to tell you, Brigida, 90% of all government things like that follow the money.
Right. The contents of Epstein's black book were recently revealed. Now, Epstein's contacts include accused pedophile Woody Allen, convicted sexual assaulter Bill Cosby, and a relative of Claire Bronfman who recently pleaded guilty in the NXIVM cult sex trafficking case. So some similar-minded people here. Now, other contacts include people like Steve Bannon, Elizabeth Hurley, Michael Bloomberg, Naomi Campbell, the list goes on. Now, we do not know what kind of relationship those people had with Epstein, and I have to make it clear that just because they're in his black book, it does not mean that they were aware or complicit in his activities. But it does reveal that he was incredibly powerful and very well connected, which made it really easy for him to get away with the alleged crimes. These people are legitimizing him. They're giving him cover. Do you think any of these contacts will now ever testify against him, if any of them know anything?
Wow, who knows? It's going to be very interesting to see what comes through the wash, what kind of trial takes place on this. But I'll tell you what, I'll be watching it close, because this is intriguing as hell.